12:33 ABC Newcastle. It is 19 to 4. When you hear the names Bogan...
Oi, Damo, give us your lighter. Man, I don't have one. Oi, what's your problem, mate? I just don't want to give you my lighter.
And Hipster...
We went to White Revolver, then Pink Sheep. Then we went to the Hole. Have you ever been to the Hole? No. Man, don't go to the Hole.
Don't go to the Hole. Hipsters don't go to the Hole, obviously. Do you think these are two very different groups of people? Could you in fact be a hipster and a bogan at the same time? Steve Threadgold has been accused of being both. He is a senior lecturer in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Newcastle. He's also convener of the Newcastle Youth Studies Group. G'day, Steve.
Hey, how you going?
All right. What are you today, a hipster or a bogan?
Well, it's a good question. It depends who you are.
Yeah?
And what category you're in. So, yeah, this...
Nathaniel is going, you're a hipster, you're a hipster.
Yeah, I don't know about that. These kind of figures is what I call them, as kind of ways of talking about other people and putting people into categories. And they're particularly useful for the way that people communicate these days about class without really talking about class.
Okay.
So the hipster's equates to kind of middle class consumption practices, where the bogan is more, the working class kind of vulgar tastes, I suppose.
I can see where that's coming from. Hipsters would hang around coffee shops.
Yeah, that's what the stereotype
Bogans
is.
perhaps would not hang around coffee shops.
Well, that's interesting. So they would both hang around coffee shops, where the hipster would hang around one single origin, organic,
Cold
where
drip.
the bogan might be more likely to apparently go to Gloria Jean or
Oh,
McDonald's
okay,
coffee, right? So it's the same, hipsters and bogans both have tattoos.
Mac Cafe, is Mac Cafe hipster or bogan?
Probably bogan. Things like tattoos too, like bogans and hipsters both have tattoos, but they have very different kinds.
What's a hipster tattoo?
They tend to be more ironic, and about pop cultural items and stuff like that, where the idea about the bogan tattoos are more kind of vulgar, large, skulls and stuff like that.
Right.
So you might note here that I'm kind of reluctant to label these things specific terms.
Well, we're talking stereotypes, aren't we?
Yeah, they are. They're very stereotypical things. So
hang on a second, Nathaniel. Come in here. He's got what has he got? Short pants, I think, today, but he's certainly got a short sleeve. No, he's got long pants. Come and show us your tattoos.
It's great on radio.
Are they ironic?
I don't know. I'll ask the expert. What do you think, Dr. Steve?
Well, it's not up to me to diagnose that. It's whether you got them as ironic or not.
They're very personal to me, but I suppose some are ironic.
Like you've got a lighthouse. You've got a lot of trains and that kind of thing. What's the one at the top? This gentleman with his bird's nest hat.
It's got a bird in it.
With a bird. It's got a bird on it. Portlandia.
I put a bird on it.
So that's a great hipster term there. The idea of putting a bird on it. The Portlandia parody is a great hipster parody.
Righto. I don't think bogan, though.
No.
Whether they're hipster tattoos or not, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't have said they're bogan tattoos.
In my tattoos.
They're your tattoos.
I have been called a hipster.
Okay, righto. Thank you. You may go.
Thank you.
Do hipsters wear Hawaiian shirts on
Yes,
Friday?
yes.
They do.
But I think bogans may as well. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, okay.
So what these things do, they allow people to kind of talk about others, when I say they're kind of the new language of class, they allow us to talk about tastes and values and morals and things like that are kind of strongly correlated with classes, but we kind of then ignore the economic basis of why some people may have these tastes over others and the opportunities to consume in different ways and stuff like that. So that's kind of why I find them particularly interesting. They cross boundaries in terms of who can be labelled these things, because they're all about symbols, and symbols are sometimes hard to interpret, but they tend to, when we do use them as class terminologies, not talk about, money and jobs and disadvantage and privilege and things like that.
I imagine, I don't know whether hipsters are still the same, but hipsters originally did not appreciate being labelled as a hipster.
That's right.
That was part of the qualification to be a
Yeah.
hipster, is you did not like being called a hipster. I imagine also bogans do not like being called bogans, or anyone would not like being called a bogan.
Well, it's kind of changed over time. So one of the things youth sociologists such as myself study is subcultures, so punk and goth and stuff like that, where people actually identify with those labels as a form of self-identity. Mm-hmm. Hipsters and bogans are definitely things we call other people, not so much self-identity. But
And when you call other people that, there is also a tendency to be, it's a put down.
Yeah,
to
it's
call
about
someone a
else.
hipster
It's an insult.
is going, yes.
Yeah, it's what again, sociologists call symbolic violence. We're kind of, making distinction on someone else, and we're kind of denigrating their tastes. But the way that these things have changed over time. The bogan started off quite a playful term, about Westies and stuff like that. I'd say in the late 90s, early 2000s, it became used a lot more harder, and was particularly middle-class opinion pieces were kind of denigrating certain sectors of society using it. There was a couple of books written about bogan that actually seems to have seen the term become more playfully and ironically used recently. And the same, with the hipster, it's kind of the same. And I would say at the moment, the hipster itself is being used in a much more kind of harder, insulting way at the moment than it was maybe 10 years ago. Particularly in Britain, they're seen as the kind of bastion of gentrification and all this kind of stuff. They're kind of moving poor people out of inner city places to have, better coffee shops and all that kind of stuff. So the way the terms themselves has changed over time. And that's something that's quite interesting about the way we communicate as well.
I'm trying to compare it to the old stereotypes of class.
Yep.
If you could well imagine many people being proudly working class.
Yeah.
People would not be proudly bogan.
That's right, yeah. So we've always had this
is there a lack of self-awareness involved in both groups, that the people who are labelled by others as being bogans either don't agree or have never thought of it. Same with hipsters. That there's this lack of self-awareness of, do you realise you're doing all of the things that your class, in inverted commas, is supposed to do?
Yeah, that's so. I'm only just starting to talk to actual real people about this stuff. What I've been doing so far is analysing how they're using the media. So particularly opinion pieces and journalists. Generally, journalists are fairly middle class, and when they use the term bogan, they're using it in an insultive way and not allowing the bogan too much reflexivity and self-awareness. When they're writing about hipsters, though, they're often tending to be writing about stuff that's very close to what the journalists do in their day-to-day life. So there's a lot more kind of, knowing, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hipsters are kind of bad and silly, but, they're not so bad. Mm-hmm. And then, in brackets, of course, they're kind of like me. So there's a kind of social distance here between the way those things are used. The middle classes tend to have those positions where they can make their opinions known. So they talk about the working class in that way. Working class people don't normally have that ability to make their opinions and tastes fashionable or whatever. So, they're used in very different ways like that.
So what's the next step? We've identified there are certain parts of the community, notably in the media, who will be quite biased in the way they refer to these two groups.
Yeah, they can be, yeah.
Therefore, where does that take us? What's the next?
What normally happens with these terminologies, they die, disappear, or they become something else, and we will move on to whatever the next kind of terminologies we'll use to talk about this stuff. There was the yuppie in the 80s and 90s. That was the kind of middle class kind of thing that we kind of denigrate the middle class with and say that they're, into vapid consumerism and stuff like that. Now,
have yuppies gone? We don't have yuppies.
Well, you don't really hear it used as much anymore.
You
maybe
don't
around,
hear.
but,
I think there's probably still as many yuppies as there were before, the term itself has gone.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Steve Threadgold, who is a senior lecturer at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Newcastle. Pop your headphones on, Steve. We'll take a call. Sue's online. Sue has rung through on 1300 33 12 33. G'day, Sue.
Hello, how are you? I'm so interested in hearing about these bogans.
Okay.
We happened to be in Nyngan a couple of months ago as we were coming back from Burke as they were installing the big bogan.
The big bogan?
Yeah.
Yes.
How big is the big bogan?
Oh, wow. I'd say it's about 5-6 metres.
Okay, Nathaniel has provided me with a photo. Nyngan, New South Wales. You've got a guy with a fishing pole, thongs, shorts, unfashionably short shorts, I would say as well.
Yep.
And wife beater, t-shirt or singlet, with the fishing pole and the fish and the esky and the big bogan written on the esky. It's a glorious thing to behold.
And you may sit there on the esky and have your photo taken under the big bogan.
And Nyngan is quite happy to identify with the bogans.
Well, because why is it called the big bogan? because they're on the Bogan River.
Oh, of course, righto. You don't get more bogan than that. Do you have bogans in Booral, Sue?
Yes.
How can you tell? How can you tell they're bogans? Are you a bogan?
No, I'm more a hippie more.
Oh, hippie, righto. Because hippies are quite different to hipsters.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
At the moment, I've got my hipster type shorts on.
Okay.
All
Sue, good to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So they certainly have bogans, according to Sue, in Booral, but not hipsters. I don't know.
When in England there was a little bit of controversy within England about that when they were planning to build that. Some of the residents thought it was a great idea, and others thought it was kind of going to be embarrassing.
See, the weird thing about that is the irony. The irony is hipster.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a strange combination of the two. They're being both hipster and bogan by putting that up in
And
England.
I have no doubt it'll be like a hipster thing to do in the future, to go and get your photo taken ironically in front of it.
Yes. Because irony is a hipster thing, for whatever reason that is. I have no idea how that works.
It's kind of because it's a distancing. You don't have to be too serious and committed to things in that sense. You can kind of flit around and have all kinds of eclectic tastes and kind of laugh at it all, because let's face it, consumerism is quite silly, and so let's just kind of playfully and ironically do it.
So there is a bit of self-awareness in being a hipster. If you're practicing irony, surely there is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Whereas
People
the
don't like
bogan,
the label, but like
the true bogan would not have irony.
Well, I actually think in the end there's no such thing as a bogan or a hipster. They're just kind of things that we hang our own anxieties on and to talk through and about other people. I'm not saying there's not people wearing wife beaters and singlets, and there's not people that have silly beards and worry too much about coffee, but the actual labels themselves and the way they attach to people become way too stereotypical to actually describe any one person, if you know what I mean. They just don't really make sense to talk about an individual as that thing.
So the thing can be a hipster thing or a bogan thing.
Yeah.
It's a bogan thing to wear thongs and shorts.
Yeah.
It's a hipster thing to have a beard and ride a fixie, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are a hipster and that defines you.
Yeah,
or you are a bogan and that defines you.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And the mullet haircut's another great example. So it's traditionally been associated with the bogan, but it's actually kind of a hipsterish thing to do to have an ironic mullet.
We're talking about men here predominantly.
Yeah.
Where do women fit into this whole thing?
That's a good question. So definitely in the way that the bogan and the hipster are represented in the media, as I've been talking about, the bogan tends to have attributed masculine aggressive traits, regardless if they're male or female, where the hipster tends to be equated and represented a little bit more effeminate, regardless if they're males or females. So there does seem to be kind of a gender association with both, but they kind of, don't apply to males or females specifically. It's about the way that they kind of cross those boundaries.
Harder to identify from the outside those stereotypical things about women. The beards, for instance, and perhaps not riding fixies so much.
Well, no, definitely riding
maybe
fixies,
they do. Okay.
And big glasses and all that kind of stuff, and having, again, ironic tattoos and having specific tastes, and even more recently there's been the idea that knitting becomes a kind of hipster thing to do in cafes, and there's all kinds of things that are attached to these that can be gender specific or not.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of the representative of masculine and feminine, they seem to be bogan masculine, and the hipster seems to be more feminized.
Steve, no, this is to you, Steve, from Barney. Do you know Barney?
Barney Langford.
It'll be Barney Langford,
I'm
right?
actually
So this is from
supervising Barney's PhD.
Okay, righto. Barney is saying bogan is a term used to denote superiority of those using the term over those less than them. It tells us more about the user than the bogan. Oh, is this what Barney's PhD is about? Has he summed up his PhD in 12 words there?
No, but that's a very good point. Yeah. So when we use these terms, we're actually positioning ourselves in a kind of hierarchy, I suppose, of taste and class and values.
And it tells us more. Would you agree with Barney that it tells us more about the person using the term than about the person about whom the term is being used?
Yeah. So my favourite sociologist has this great quote. It's taste classifies, and it classifies the classifier. So what that
Okay.
means is you can make an assumption about, someone's a certain kind of person because they're wearing clothes, but that classification you make classifies you.
Yes, so you are classified rather than the person
That's
you're
right.
talking about. That's very interesting. Who's your favourite sociologist?
Pierre Bourdieu.
Okay.
French
Rightio.
dude that died a long time ago.
Okay, for future discussion perhaps. Steve, really interesting. You've got us going today about thinking about ourselves when we use these terms, and what it means about us rather than
Yeah.
them.
And it is somewhat kind of unavoidable to kind of put people in categories because language is kind of a shortcut, right? It's hard to describe things. We need these kind of terminology sometimes, but they often end up doing things that we don't mean them to do, and often can actually, be about class and gender and race when we don't mean them to be either.
Yeah. That's quite true. I mean, you're describing, I'm telling you about somebody that I met in the street, blah, blah, blah. She's a bit of a bogan. So, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's right. You instantly
Whereas if I went, well, she had a difficult childhood and the blah, 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 and I could be
Yeah.
here for 20 minutes going
That's
through
right.
the whole thing, but
Yeah.
I can sum it all up by going, she's a bit of a bogan.
That's right, and our language is hierarchical like that, right? The language
Yeah.
does a good job of erasing history.
Yes. Oh, dear. You think about a lot of things in sociology, don't you?
We do.
Senior lecturer in School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the uni is Steve Threadgold. Dr. Steve Threadgold, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
Thanks, Paul.
Really interesting to talk to you again. We look forward to next time, 12:33 ABC Newcastle. It's now a couple of minutes away from the news.